Chapter 6, Part 2. Remember, we're right in the middle of August's story about Our Lady. So Lily says, I stared at the statue, feeling the fractured place in my heart. So this is the kind of the thing that she mentions a lot of times when she's thinking about her mom, how she feels fractured or she feels broken. And so, August said, the people cried and danced and clapped their hands. They went one at a time and touched their hands to her chest, wanting to grab onto the solace in her heart. They did this every Sunday in the praise house, dancing and touching her chest, and eventually they painted a red heart on her breast so the people would have a heart to touch. Our Lady filled their hearts with fearlessness and whispered to them plans of escape. He went home. Finally, he gave up and let her stay there. The room grew quiet as August stood there a minute, letting everything sink in. When she spoke again, she raised her arms out beside her. The people called her Our Lady of Chains. They called her that not because she wore chains. Not because she wore chains, the daughters chanted. They called her Our Lady of Chains because she broke them. June wedged the cello between her legs and played Amazing Grace, and the daughters of Mary got to their feet and swayed together like colorful seaweed on the ocean floor. Finale, but no. June switched over to the piano and banged out a jazzed-up version of Go Tell It on the Mountain. That's when August started a conga line. She danced over to Linnell, who latched onto August's waist. Cressy hooked onto Linnell, followed by Mabley, and off they went around the room, causing Cressy to grab hold of her crimson hat. So a few things in that paragraph. One, it's just a fun paragraph, right? But where it says, the daughters of Mary got to their feet and swayed together like colorful seaweed on the ocean floor. Isn't that beautiful imagery? You can just imagine what that might look like and think about what type of figurative language is used there, right? It's a comparison and it uses like. So what would that be? It's a simile or a metaphor. Which one? It uses like. It would be a simile. Hopefully you got that right. And then at the bottom here, another thing, followed Mabley, and off they went around the room, causing Cressy to hold on to her crimson hat. Lots of those hard C sounds, right? Causing Cressy, crimson. So what's that called when we have repetition of the beginning sound? Do you remember? Alliteration. When they swung back by, Queenie and Violet joined them, then Sugar Girl. I wanted to be a part of it too, but I only watched. And so did Rosalind and Otis. June seemed to play faster and faster. I fanned my face, trying to get a little air, feeling lightheaded. When the dance ended, the daughters stood panting in a half circle before Our Lady of Chains, and what they did next took my breath away. One at a time, they went and touched the statue's fading red heart. Queenie and her daughter went together and rubbed their palms against the wood. Lunel pressed her fingers to Mary's heart, then kissed each one of them in a slow, deliberate way, a way that brought tears to my eyes. Otis pressed his forehead to the heart, standing there the longest time of all, head to heart, like he was filling up his empty tank. June kept playing while each of them came, until there was only Rosalind and me left. May nodded to June to keep on with the music and took Rosalind's hand, pulling her to Our Lady of Chains, so even Rosalind got to touch Mary's heart. I wanted to touch her vanishing red heart too, as much as that anything I'd ever wanted. As I rose from my chair, my head was still swimming some. I walked toward Black Mary with my hand lifted, but just as I was about to reach her, June stopped playing. She stopped right in the middle of the song, and I was left in the silence with my hand stretched out. Drawing it back, I looked around me, and it was like I was seeing everything through a train's thick window. A blur passed before me, a moving wave of color. I'm not one of you, I thought. My body felt numb. I thought how nice it would be to grow smaller and smaller until I was a dot of nothing. I heard August scolding, June, what got into you? But her voice was so distant. I called to the Lady of Chains, but maybe I wasn't really saying her name out loud, only hearing myself call on the inside. That's the last I remember, her name echoing through the empty spaces. When I woke, I was lying on August's bed across the hall with an ice-cold washcloth folded over my forehead, and August and Rosalind staring down at me. Rosalind had pulled up the skirt of her dress and was fanning me with it, showing most of her thighs. Since when have you started fainting? She said. and sat down on the edge of the bed, causing me to roll into her side. She scooped me into her arms. For some reason, this caused my chest to fill with more sadness than I can bear. I wrestled myself free, claiming I needed a drink of water. Maybe it was the heat, August said. I should have turned on the fans. It must have been 90 degrees in there. I'm all right, I told them. But to tell the truth, I was bewildered at myself. I felt I'd stumbled upon an amazing secret. It was possible to close your eyes and exit life without actually dying. You just had to faint. Only I didn't know how to make it happen, how to pull the plug so I could drain away when I needed to. My fainting spell had broken up the daughters of Mary and sent May to the Wailing Wall. June had gone upstairs to her room and locked the door, while the daughters huddled in the kitchen. We chalked it up to heat. Heat, we said. Heat would make a person do strange things. You should have seen how August and Rosalind fussed over me the rest of the evening. You want some root beer, Lily? How about a feather pillow? Here, swallow this spoon of honey. We sat in the den, where I ate supper off a tray, which was a privilege in itself. June was still in her room, not answering August's calls at the door, and May, who wasn't allowed near the TV because she'd already spent way too much time today at the wall, was in the kitchen clipping recipes from McCall's magazine. On the television, Mr. Cronkite said they were going to send a rocket ship to the moon. On July 28th, the United States of America will launch Ranger 7 from Cape Kennedy, Florida, he said. It was going to take a 253,665-mile flight before it crash-landed onto the moon. The whole point was to take pictures of the surface and send them back. Well, baby Jesus, said Rosalind, a rocket to the moon. August shook her head. Next, they'll be walking around up there. We had all thought President Kennedy was off his rocker when he declared we'd land a man on the moon. The Sylvan newspaper had called it a lunatic vision. Luna as in moon, get it? I took the article to class for current events bulletin board. We all said a man on the moon. Right. But you can never underestimate the power of a cutthroat competition. We wanted to beat the Russians. That was what made the world go round for us. Now it looked like we would. August cut off the TV set. I need some air. We all went, Rosalind and August holding on to my elbows in case I started to keel over again. It was the in-between time, before day leaves and night comes, a time I've never been partial to because of the sadness that lingers in the space between coming and going. Going and coming, sorry. August gazed at the sky where the moon was rising, large and ghostly silver. Look at her good, Lily, she said, 'cause you're seeing the end of something. Yes, you are, because as long as people have been on this earth, the moon has been a mystery to us. Think about it. She's strong enough to pull the oceans, and when she dies away, she always comes back again. My mama used to tell me Our Lady lived on the moon, and that I should dance when her face was bright and hibernate when it was dark. August stared at the sky a long moment, and then, turning toward the house, said, "Now it won't ever be the same. Not after they've landed up there and walked around on her. She'll just be one more big science project." I thought about the dream I'd had that night Rosalind and I slept by the pond, how the moon had cracked to pieces. August disappeared into the house, and Rosalind headed for her cot in the honey house, but I stayed on and stared at the sky, imagining Ranger 7 blasting away for it. I knew one day I would go back into the parlor when no one was around and touch the lady's heart. Then I would show August the picture of my mother and see if the moon broke loose and fell from the sky. That's the end of chapter 6. There is a journal for this today, so make sure you get that done.